So today I'm working on a Mercedes ice cream van, and as you can see, this front wing has sustained a heavy impact that has stretched the metal and left a very deep crease going vertically. But stay tuned and I'll show you all the stages it took to straighten this panel back to this. Hi everyone, it's Jake here from Dents and welcome along for another paintless dent removal video. As explained in the intro, today I'm working on this Mercedes ice cream van which has sustained a heavy impact on the passenger side front wing, leaving this deep crease as shown here. Now the customer initially sent me a photo of this dent and I said, yeah, no problem, I can fix this for you. However, when I arrived and saw this dent, I realised that the photo didn't do this dent justice at all, and I was ready to walk away and advise this customer to take this to a local body shop. However, the customer explained to me that because this was a work vehicle, every day it was off the road, it'd be costing him money, and because of this 3-stage red, white and green paint stripe system on the front wing, it wouldn't be an easy fix to mask, paint and match these colours back up again. So we had a nice dry workshop to use, and really it was the perfect day to try and fix this, because with this weather, I'm guessing he's not going to be selling many ice creams. So we agreed that I would do the very best that I could. Right, let's jump in to this repair. Right, let's take a close look at this damage. Now it's quite obvious that something must have hit this wing very hard and very quickly to form this crease and stretch this metal. It's also left some secondary damage around it, so there are many areas that need to be addressed. First, we have the obvious line crease that runs all the way from the top of the wheel arch down through the profile line and stops at the edge of the panel. We also have this crown around the perimeter of the crease here. And if we look above the top of this line crease, we have a secondary crease forming an arc shape. And if you look closely, we have quite a large low area sitting above and around the whole damage marked here in yellow. It's also worth mentioning that the panel is manufactured from mild steel. Now, when we look at this dent under the LED fog board, you can really get a sense of how deep and stretched this metal really is by how dark the centre is. We can also see more clearly the low areas I just highlighted around this damage too. So because this crease is very sharp, I need to use a lot of heat to prevent the paint from cracking. So initially I put on a standard rubber tip onto my screw-on tip bar and just gave some gentle pushes underneath, just so I could feel the type of tension that this dent was giving me back. From doing this, I could tell very quickly that I was dealing with some pretty sharp locked-in metal here. So I decided to start off with a much more rigid tip, so I went for my standard nylon tip. Now, as the dent had equal tension down the whole crease, I decided to come down from the top to start pushing this crease out. Using the hard nylon tip and the support of my hand, I slowly pushed the crease out little by little. I continued using the heat as this metal needed to be pushed out with a lot of force. So as you can see, the dent is reducing in size, although it will need a lot of work to get this completely straight again. Now, when pushing up metal as tight as this, inevitably we will get some high areas, so these are tapped back down again. I'm using my aluminium knockdown here and I'm using it with a nylon tip. So after some initial pushing up and tapping back down again, I've managed to get as far as this. What's interesting is that now some of this crease has come up, we can see that the force of the impact has even left its mark in the paintwork. This in itself will be a challenge to try and remove. Now, using some heat again, I'm going to soften the paint up in this area so I can try and push the body line back out straight again. I'm still using my nylon tip on my screw-on tip bar. I'm putting a tremendous amount of force into this dent and it's giving me very little in return. This is because the metal in this dent is completely locked up and just doesn't want to move. I also have to be very careful, as if I push too hard near the edge, I can blow out the wheel arch profile and potentially split the metal underneath. That's why I'm using my hand here for support. I'm using a variety of different knockdowns in this repair, as there are very different types of high areas to deal with. Some are very sharp highs and some are larger, more gradual crowns. Now, the edge profile is coming back, although not cleanly enough for my liking, and we still have this area on the flat part of the wheel arch to deal with. So with plenty more heat and some hard pushes from behind, I continue on pushing up the tight areas of this dent, and there are several low areas across the whole face of this wheel arch. Using my nylon tap down, I continue removing any sharp areas. So let's have a quick review of where we are so far. Now, I know it doesn't look pretty, but with some of these challenging dents, sometimes they have to look worse before they start looking better. Now it's time to deal with some of the large, low areas around the perimeter of this dent. Using some heat, I soften the paint before I go in underneath with my large rubber tip. Using this tip, I move around this low area in order to bring it up level again with the surrounding metal. Fortunately, this metal is much easier and softer to push up than the sharp crease beside it. Using my nylon tap down, I go across all the areas of the panel that are too high and bring them back down level again. I then use my aluminium hammer with a large rubber tip to address any high crowns still present on the panel. Now, to have got the dent even to this stage I think was an achievement, as the metal was completely stretched and locked up, so I had to use quite a few advanced techniques in order to gather the metal up and cold shrink it. Now comes the painstaking task of trying to reduce this heavy texture and blend it back in with the original orange peel texture of the paintwork. So to achieve this, I'm using some sharp tips and some sharp tap downs. So the texture is reducing, but there is plenty more work to be done, pushing up all these very small micro lows. As always, I'm making sure I work the dent from all angles. This will ensure that it looks straight from every direction. As you can see, I'm using lots of heat, lots of pushes, and lots of tapping down to get this dent back level again. Now, normally on a really bad stretched crease like this, it's unavoidable creating some texture on the panel, and normally this can be flatted back down with some fine paper and polished to blend it back in again. However, as the green paint had very little thickness to it, I was unable to sand this back, so I could only polish off any hammer marks made from the dent removal process instead. So now it's time to check out the final result. Okay, so in terms of what I was working with here, this was the absolute best I could do with this repair, but considering how stretched and creased this panel was in the first place, it wasn't a bad result. It saved the customer losing this vehicle in a body shop and potentially costing him a lot of business. So as I mentioned before in the video, I was trying to get the texture in this repair as fine as possible so I could wet sand it and polish it to smooth it all out. But unfortunately, this green painted section here had hardly any thickness to it. I tested a section underneath the wheel arch with some superfine wet and dry sanding paper, and it sanded straight through. So I just couldn't risk wet sanding the top section of this wheel arch, so I had to leave some texture behind, but I made sure it was absolutely minimal. There was another bit of damaged paint on the top section of the wheel arch, but with all the paint defects that were left on the panel, I reduced them as best as I could. Well, thanks again for watching. I really hope you enjoyed watching me tackle this difficult dent. If you like the video, it'd be great to get a thumbs up, and if you aren't subscribed already, click that subscribe button and don't forget to click the notification bell to be kept in touch with all the latest videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all on the next video.